So it's 4 days since Hurricane Sandy washed through New York, and this is the first time we've been back on air. As you can see, we are not exactly showered and shaved as our usual selves, but we are here in the office. Richard, you have written quite a bit about the impact this has had on the economy,
right.
Of course on Wall Street and the markets. You too, Anthony. I mean, what's your take on it now, 4 days into the...
Well, I mean, here's one thing. I mean, this is big picture, but, you know, the estimated losses right now, total economic losses, are something like $50 billion.
That's like the max. It could
well,
be 50
actually, I don't think it's the max,
right.
but it's kind of everything. It's insured losses plus other
plus
losses.
productivity
and
loss
so on.
and
right.
economic
and so on and so forth.
growth and all that kind
now,
of stuff. Right.
Obviously, you get some of that back with the activity of reconstruction and all the rest of it, but it made us think again about this proposal that's been made a couple of times in the last few years of an infrastructure bank. It seems you fly around the world, you know, we all do. U.S. airports are third world, frankly. I mean, we're not allowed to use that term
anymore. Well, New York's airports are third world.
Well, New York's especially. I mean, they're the older ones. You know, the infrastructure everywhere needs a boost, and storm defenses, you know, you can't prevent all damage, but storm defenses sort of fall into the same category.
Yeah, but there's a lot of evidence over the last few years of America's infrastructure just not being anywhere near up to snuff. I mean, where was it? Was it in Minnesota or somewhere 2 or 3 years ago where the bridge just collapsed?
It's a recognized problem. The government doesn't seem to be able to...
And there have been solutions. An infrastructure bank was actually proposed by...
Beauty of I mean, if everybody in Congress was willing to spend the money, you wouldn't need an infrastructure bank.
Right.
But the infrastructure bank is one way to leverage federal dollars with private money as well. And this has not made it a few times into legislation, and maybe it deserves a rethink. Because this is the, you know, defenses for some of these low-lying communities, maybe flood barrier type things for New York.
Right.
You know, even smaller things like somehow protecting just specific bits of infrastructure in Manhattan.
Right. But right now there's still cleanup. There's know you've got people. I mean, you and I, both our apartments in New York are without electricity.
Right.
You had to travel all the way cycling in from Brooklyn.
Wearing a lovely T-shirt.
Yes, with a Star Wars motif to match your Lucasfilm story earlier this week. Yep. But I mean, what Wall Street seems to be kind of back on even keel pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, don't forget, first of all, Wall Street, most of them are uptown these days, or midtown anyway. Goldman Sachs, although despite being right on the river, managed to get very little wrong with it. I mean, it's got its own generator. People were getting very annoyed. Sandbags all over the place. They got a little bit of water in the building. That's it. A lot of people were very annoyed that they saw Goldman Sachs with power. And it's like, well, guys, they've got a generator. Although one could argue it is the second bailout of Wall Street that taxpayers are paying for. But no, I think in general they seem to be okay. I think in part they had 9/11 and also the blackout to work out, well, where do we want our buildings to be? Now, Goldman looks a little bit
I mean, they're on reclaimed land downtown.
Yeah, they're not just on reclaimed land. Don't forget, one of their major backup offices is on the other side of the river. So arguably...
So as long as Hudson doesn't...
Yeah, and I've been hearing that people inside have been talking about, well, should we have both those buildings? Don't forget, Morgan Stanley, after 9/11, sold its building its second building in Times Square to Lehman Brothers at the time to make sure that it could move out of the grid completely.
Right. All right. Well, we will be back next week, hopefully, clean-shaven and showered from New York from Breaking Views.